I think there is a growing appetite for more, but there has to be more than um, just telling people what to do all the time. And that has to be a good thing. That has to be a good thing. I speak a lot about the culture that driving instructors are exposed to, and the two biggest channels that they have exposure to are the test center and social media. Both of which have real issues, because the person who shouts loudest gets the biggest audience, as we know, says he, talking into a big microphone.
I'm joined by Stewart Lochrie tonight. Stewart, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Josh. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Looking forward to where we end up tonight. Some interesting topics that we've been discussing. But would you like to introduce yourself a little bit for maybe people that haven't come across you yet, for any of the viewers?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I'm Stewart Lochrie. I'm the Scottish guy, as someone referred to me at the expo a couple of weeks ago. I live in Glasgow. I own a driving school, Caledonian Driver Training, and I'm also the head of engagement for the ADINGC. I founded a training company which launches in March next year called Bright Coaching. Maybe talk a little bit about that later on. But yeah, I do a few things in the industry. Yeah.
Lots of things going on. There's a pattern here with people like yourselves. There's never just one thing. There's loads, and just sharing that knowledge. I think it's great. And the coaching course, I've been keeping an eye on that. But we might as well start there. We can talk about your course, but I know we've mentioned about coaching and applying coaching, the conversations around coaching, instructing, teaching for driving instructors. What's your views with that?
On coaching versus instruction, is that which is best? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be debates around whether we should be coaching. Then you get people that are like, I tend to instruct. What's the difference?
What's the difference? Okay. Um, so the difference is instructing is where you have an expert who knows everything about the car and everything about the roads, and they take on a pupil who knows very little, or is assumed to know very little, and in a very kind of Western education kind of pattern, the the pupil has their empty vessel filled by the expert who has all this knowledge. You sometimes see this with people pouring all that knowledge down onto the sponge that's lying on the floor, and the sponge is supposed to absorb all that knowledge. To me, that's a good example of an instructor-led kind of relationship. And when I refer to Western education, what I mean by that is that's the way our schools traditionally work. We have one teacher who is the expert in a topic or a subject, and he or she speaks to 20 or 30 people, and then the pupils get tested at the end of, or a couple of times a week, and then at the end of the year they have a big test to sit. That's the way we do things. But also, it's also very relatable to parenting. Kids are brought up, for better or worse, being told what to do. Do this, don't do that. And you're laughing. I know you have three kids, yeah?
Yeah, I've got
You
three.
know
They
all
get
about
told.
this. You know all about this, yeah. And that's just life, I think, because everyone's busy, and it's just quicker to tell young people what to do. And sometimes they do it, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they'll do it for a week or two, and then they'll stop doing it. So that whole expert-led authority figure is how I think of instructing. Now, I fully appreciate that I've painted that in a very negative light. It doesn't have to be that way. When you asked me at the start, what I do, one of the other things I'm doing, and I've nearly finished, is an ILM diploma in coaching and mentoring. And it gave me a very kind of interesting insight into the difference between the two. And I think you can draw some parallels between mentoring and instruction, because mentoring is that figure at the top, the expert, very kind of ancient Greece kind of model where you had somebody taking in all the young people and looking after them and teaching them philosophy and all that kind of stuff. So mentoring can be good. It can work. My background is hospitality management. I used to train people all the time, customer service, systems, training people up into supervisory roles. And that's very much, this is how we do things. This is how you start your shift. I know your background is training. You probably relate to this in the military. This is how we operate this particular piece of kit, this computer. These are the forms you have to sign once you've done it. This is the health and safety stuff. So I'm not saying that instructing and mentoring is bad, but there is a fundamental difference. When we talk about coaching, since coaching came into our industry, and I guess you could say it formally came in, there's a bit of debate about this. Some people would say 2014, when the check test changed to the standards check, but it's actually in the National Driver, Rider and Training Standard that you should coach. I like to think of coaching more as a relationship, as a way of thinking about education, as a way of thinking about people, not assuming that people don't know a thing about cars or seatbelts or physics. This is the brake, it will slow you down, all that kind of stuff. So a kind of coaching approach to me is more important than the things that people have been arguing about in our industry, which is coaching skills. So should you be coaching people or should you be instructing people? I don't actually care. What I care about is how you approach your pupil, how you think about them, what opportunities you give them to figure things out for themselves. And the techniques should follow from that. And when I talk about coaching techniques, I'm talking about things like, for anyone who doesn't have experience of this, goal setting, encouraging people to self-reflect, encouraging people to feedback on their own performance, as opposed to being given feedback all the time, or the dreaded praise sandwich. I'm not going to talk about the praise sandwich just now. Remind me about the praise sandwich later when we talk about the DVSA. So these coaching techniques, you can have these coaching techniques and know what they are and have them scripted and be able to use them. But if you don't have the coaching kind of mindset and the approach and the attitudes towards people, then you're probably not going to get much success from them. Just to give you a very quick example of that, the check test changed to the standards check, and all of a sudden everyone looks at the first line and it says, did the instructor meet the pupil's goals and needs? So yeah, you have to get a goal. You have to get a goal. What do you want to do today? What do you want to do? And all of a sudden, instructors were on Facebook forums all over the country saying, well, coaching doesn't work. Well, what do you mean it doesn't work? So keep asking my pupil what they want to do, and they keep just saying, oh, I don't know. I don't know. You tell me, you're the instructor. And people took from that the person did not want to be coached. They wanted to be told what to do. And that's fundamentally wrong. So, okay, you know how to ask someone how to set a goal. Brilliant. You've done that training course. But if you don't have that relationship and that approach to people, and you've not set that up in some way that that's what the expectation is going to be, then the reason they're saying no is they've never been asked before. You've just thrown them a curveball. And worse, you've done it on your standards check. You've been telling them what to do for 25 hours. And today on your standards check, you've decided to ask them how to set a goal. Now, I'm being harsh there. I don't think that happens anymore, but that's what used to happen maybe 10 years ago. And that's when we had all this argument about coaching skills versus instructional skills. So I think that argument is hopefully becoming less valid now. And we're getting round to more about coaching approaches and ways of being. That was a very long answer. Sorry, Josh. It's going to be a long episode.
It was great. The difference is there, because what interests me is a few things, but the one I'd like to start with from what you said, it sounds like there's potentially a crossover where at points we need to be instructing and points we need to be coaching. I know I've mentioned this on previous episodes, or the guests have mentioned it. And that's a balance I find I struggle with in my lessons, because sometimes I can be quite quick to tell when a question posed the right way would probably have got to the same conclusion, but knowing how coaching works and the effect on the individual and the person, they're going to retain much more information if they've come up with the answer, rather than me telling them. So like you said, that quick fix, they're not necessarily going to remember it quite as well. Is that something that you can practice? Is that something that you'd recommend? Do you think you can use both? Do you think they're interchangeable?
Yeah, I think you have to use both. You said something there about you find yourself telling people where you know that a question posed in the right way could maybe have got a better result or the right answer. I would challenge you on that. I'm not sure that's always the case. I think there are occasions where you can ask too many questions and you can put people on the spot. And I think there is a balance. Coaching is difficult. Coaching is difficult. That's the thing as well that we always need to remember. It does take training. You can't learn to be a coach from reading a book. You have to know the principles and you have to practice it. And one of those principles is that, yes, we encourage people to solve problems for themselves. We encourage people to work things out. We have that approach that everyone has that ability within them to find the right answer. And we know that that's going to be great because they'll believe it. All that good stuff. But that doesn't mean that they will always get there. You know, they might just be having a bad day. They might be, you know, you could ask me a question tonight on coaching or driving instructor training or something, and I will, or, you know, don't ask me anything on the highway code, and I would not know the answer, even though I know this stuff. But if you put me on the spot with something and I know we're recording this and it's going to go out on YouTube, I might freeze and I might not know the answer. That can happen to anyone. So I think the skill you need to develop and the skill you need to practice is listening, active listening, which I'm sure you've spoken about with some of your other guests, creating that safe space, but recognizing that if your pupil's not coming up with that answer, being comfortable enough to say, okay, that's all really good stuff. Do you mind if I make a suggestion? Do you mind if I just make an observation on something that's happened there? And that's really good if, for example, you've been doing, I don't know, roundabouts or something like that, and you're asking your pupil how it's went, and they think it's went really well, and you're trying to get to the thing that wasn't quite right, and they're guessing, and they're saying, oh yeah, so maybe my speed was a bit fast on approach, and you know it was the braking. And if they're not getting there, then that's the point to say, right, okay, yeah, okay, that's really good self-awareness, really good self-assessment that you've just done there. Do you mind if I offer something in? And that's the relationship. That's the knack. If you jump, the opposite of that is you say, well, actually, no, Stewart, you're wrong. It was your braking. Then bang, there goes hours of rapport building and all that kind of stuff. But if you're asking for permission to share some feedback, that's a totally different dynamic.
The example you gave there was interesting. The first scenario, you're praising what they've said. Like, yeah, that's okay. Do you mind if? Because this is something I've picked up recently, is equals. You're being equal with, you're not that position of power, you're an equal. Whereas when you say no, or you're straight into this was the problem, you're putting yourself above again, and it's got that negative connotation with it rather than the positives. So whether it's the same message. It's delivered completely different, and it's going to be received, and then it's going to have a knock-on effect with the rest of the lesson, in not a good
Absolutely.
way or a good way, depending on which way you approach it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sorry to interrupt before you move that on. I listened to a podcast recently, and you hear these things sometimes, and it just kind of blows your mind a little bit. Um, you're getting your pupil to feedback on their own performance, and what you're actually doing is praising the effort that they've put in to their own self-awareness. That's what the praise is for. It's not for the skill. It's not for the well done on checking your mirrors. And the podcast I was listening to, it was from some research that was done on a group of, I can't remember their ages, but school children across various year groups in the States. And they separated them into two groups for a couple of months. And they gave them homework, a body of work to do. I can't remember the details. And one group was given praise on the results, on their scores. Have you heard about this before? Are you aware of this?
I think I may have listened to the episode where they discussed this study.
Is
It
it is
sounds
it
familiar.
is it Andrew Is it Huberman?
I'm not sure. I
Okay.
don't know. I can't place it, but it sounds like a study I've heard of.
Once everyone has listened to your podcasts and watched your YouTube videos, they should go and check out Huberman. He's brilliant. So the study was that the half of the group they praised for their results, and the other half they solely praised the effort, and they completely disregarded the results. And what they found is, by the end of whatever the trial period was, that the control group that had been praised on results, their scores went down. And the control group that were consistently praised on effort, their scores went up. And that's absolutely fascinating, because that opens up a whole conversation about the role of praise in driver training and any skill subject that you're doing. That's like subconscious ego and all that kind of stuff that I don't understand. I don't pretend to understand it. I'm reminded of something I was one of our instructors from years ago, who and that people used to say this all the time. We're driving instructors. We're not psychologists. Well, guess what, guys? We are. We've just not learnt it yet. we are psychologists.
I think that's why I enjoy this job so much,
Yeah.
is that side of it. Like what you were saying there about the praise, it makes sense because I can't remember the ins and outs and the psychology behind it. But if we look at a basic level, I'm not very educated. But if it becomes focus on test and numbers, it adds pressure. But if you're just happy to go and put some effort in and you know that you're going to get rewarded for the effort, you're going to be more inclined to put more effort in and get more praise and want to keep repeating that cycle. So the end state's going to be better because of the positive mindset that comes with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This research also mentioned they also kind of built in the talented athlete kind of mindset. So you hear about all these talented footballers, aged 15, 16, 17 years old. They get offered a contract at, I don't know, Liverpool or Man United. And that's it. They think they've made it. But it's because they've been told they are talented. You are skillful. You have this ability to play football. And if you get told that enough, then you start thinking that you're an expert. Maybe that's it. And yes, the focus on effort is definitely interesting.
Something I'm going to be more conscious of now, because I have been massively aware of praise rather than the negative side of it. But when you mentioned the study, I'd listened to it and kind of put it put it to the back of my mind, and that'll be interesting someday in the future, and not necessarily linked it to lessons and the bigger picture with everything. So that's going to help me going forwards. But with that, do you think sometimes we can be too test focused in this industry then? I know we've spoke previously about different things around this. And
can we be too test focused? I think we have to be test focused. We don't have a choice. I guess there's a difference between L tests and Part 3 and standards check tests, which is where I primarily work in preparing people for those tests. But we have to be test focused because that's the system that we work in. For better, for worse. For worse, that's the system that we have. It's not going to change anytime soon. Unfortunately, there was an opportunity to change it, perhaps with the modernising driver training I'm going to say project, but that's not the right word. Modernising driver training was a kind of consultation that happened in 2010, and it was about training the way that people were changing the way that people became driving instructors to make it a formal qualification that tied in with other kind of educational aspects within national standards from the government. It didn't happen. They decided to make kind of minimal changes, and we got the check test to standards check. So we have to be test focused because that's what the market wants. Our balance is I see my job. I don't want to speak for the industry. I see my job as, we spoke about it a little bit off air, trying to change the culture so that passing the test is a byproduct of creating a well-rounded individual who's capable of critical thinking, self-assessment, goal setting, capable of working out their own growth and development plan. And that might sound quite grand when we're thinking about learner drivers. And I've had these discussions with driving instructors who will say, learners don't want that. We're just dealing with kids. And I kind of push back a little bit on that because I think that's very patronizing to young people. I think that to assume that kids are only capable of being told what to do is going back to the problems that we spoke about at the start. We just have to give them opportunities. The same way that every other walk of life in every industry and every sector in our country is encouraged to do. And I mentioned off air that I don't feel like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And part of what I believe we should be doing is growing young people into good, well-rounded citizens, if that's not too grand, and giving them skills for life that are not just lower level GDE things. I was trying to think back. I was having this conversation a couple of months ago with someone about somebody who was off to university, a learner driver they had, and they'd thanked the driving instructor for something they'd done with goal setting because they completely changed what they were going to do at uni based on a goal setting conversation they'd had in the car. And the conversation just basically went round to, what would I be doing with my life if I'd been taught how to set goals when I was 18 years old? If I'd been taught how to assess what kind of person I wanted to be, if I'd been taught how to reflect. I didn't learn how to reflect until my mid-30s. And my life, I love my life. I have a great life. But it's been rocky. Getting here has been rocky. I would have been a totally different person. And I feel that we have the research, we have the knowledge, we have the capability to do so much more. We just don't have the leadership in our industry to get us there. That's the way I feel at the moment.
Where should that leadership come from?
You. people with it should come from people and organizations with a voice. I know where you're going with that question. And I've had a bit of flack recently for bashing the DVSA and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to bash the DVSA because I know many senior people at the DVSA and I respect them and they are good people. The DVSA does what it's supposed to do. It tests drivers on the lower levels of the GDE matrix. And they've been doing it since before the GDE matrix came out. And they try and pretend that they're doing more than that. They'll try and pretend that by sticking a sat nav on for 2 minutes, that all of a sudden we're addressing route planning on the higher levels of the GDE matrix. In actual fact, all you're doing is getting a robot to tell you what to do instead of a human being. It's not quite the same thing. And what's the other thing we're doing? Apparently mock tests are addressing the higher levels of the GED matrix. So the DVSA don't get it. There's no political will to do anything about that. And to be fair, there are far more pressing issues for the government to deal with than road safety. Road safety is actually not a huge deal in this country compared to something like cancer care. Or the problems that the NHS has, or waiting times to see a GP and all this kind of stuff. Road safety does well despite the DVSA and the Department of Transport. Shouldn't have brought the Department of Transport in because that's a different thing.
We'll cut that bit out for you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I don't want to scar. I don't want to slag off people I shouldn't be slagging off. Let's get it specific. Your goal should be specific. But where should that leadership come from? That leadership should be coming from the national associations. It should be coming from some kind of partnership between academics, national associations, and trainers who understand this stuff. And from that would hopefully come, well, before you're going to get a culture change, the way I would see this working is that some kind of partnership is formed that forces the DVSA to follow, that leads the DVSA. Because if we're waiting for the DVSA to lead us, and that's a major problem because so many people do, then nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change. Just as the DVSA is an issue, but just as big an issue are driving instructors who look to the DVSA for guidance and leadership, because obviously they're not going to get it. And the result of that is they get angry. And then they start blaming the DVSA for every idea that the DVSA comes up with. And let's be honest, not all the DVSA ideas are good ones. We know that. But then EDIs get caught in this cycle of just like blaming the DVSA for everything, instead of, as we mentioned earlier, I can't remember if it was on this or off here, taking responsibility for themselves. And just accepting the DVSA is what it is. It's not at the cutting edge of road safety. It's not at the cutting edge of, I was going to say the latest research. It's not even at the cutting edge of the last 20 years of academic research on road safety and driver psychology and behavioural change. it's dipped its toe in the water. The water was a bit cold and it jumped out again. So yeah, we need another solution, and maybe the DVSA will join us one day.
Interesting answer. Do you think there's appetite for it in the industry? I know with your links to the NJC, where do you think it's going?
So I'm more positive about the industry than I have been in the past for about 10 years now. I discovered coaching and client-centered learning through, the Hermes report, the Gadget report, and all that kind of stuff. Try Coaching Partnership deserve a shout out, and all this kind of stuff as well, because they became the vehicle that all this stuff filtered down into our industry. They got a bit of a bad rep for many things. Some of it deserved, some of it's a bit harsh. But whatever you think of the company, the qualification was a game changer. It really was. And at that time, when I came through that qualification with, all the kind of well-known guys that in the industry now, Ray Seagrave, Andrew Love, Lee and Mick at Kit, Carol Morley, who else? Loads of people. Woody Woodward, Ed Marshall over in York, Ian Lavelle and Dumfries, Terry, my business partner. I can't believe I nearly forgot about Terry. I love Terry. He'll be giving me a hard time about that. I remembered you, Terry. I remember. All of us came through at round about the same time, and we were like, hyper motivated by this stuff. We just devoured all this content and all this stuff. And we went around the country and we spread the word and we trained people. We started training our PDIs so that they had all this stuff when they came through as fully qualified instructors. And it was just a drop in the ocean, I guess, in terms of the number of PDIs who were qualifying, but it was exciting to be part of that. And then I kind of lost faith a wee bit, kind of a few years before COVID, just because I know exactly why it was. I lost faith because I was training PDIs for my driving school to be great coaches, not great coaches, to be coaches. I'm training them to be great coaches now because I know more. But at that time, I was training them to be coaches. I was doing my best. And then we had PDIs going up for their Part 3 tests, and they were failing. And it was really stressful. Because being an instructor trainer is far more stressful than being a driving instructor, because these people only have 3 attempts, as you know. And what I figured out, to my dismay and my horror, was that we all knew more about coaching and client-centered learning than the examiners did. The examiners hadn't been trained in eliciting feedback and self-awareness and rapport and active listening and all that kind of stuff. They were still looking for the core competencies. They still wanted that instructor-led approach. And that kind of got me fed up a little bit. And then in recent years, that's kind of changed. Went through COVID, and that was all that kind of stuff. And the DVSA has been struggling ever since to catch up. So we can't give them too much of a hard time for that, I don't think. But in terms of where we are now, I think it's a really exciting time again. I think that we're starting, as an industry, we're starting to figure out that balance that we mentioned between coaching and instructing. And I put my hands up and say that maybe a lot of trainers did go too far on the coaching side. And we maybe did try to force the DVSA. That's the wrong terminology. We were maybe just a bit naive. And we thought that the DVSA had signed off on Hermes and the GDA matrix when they'd done nothing of the sort. I think that's really well. And I'm not alone in this. But now I can see some light at the end of the tunnel from the examiners. And one examiner in particular, who I know in Glasgow, he used to say after our Part 3 tests, you know, we know that you guys at Caledonian are really into your coaching, but you've got to dial it back a little bit. You've got to dial it back. And they're starting to work with us a little bit, and they recognise that there are benefits to the way that we're doing it. So that's one thing that I'm really encouraged by. The next thing I'm really encouraged by is just the access to knowledge that PDIs have across the internet, across the country, to free CPD. And I think that has been the biggest, most fundamental change that has the potential to change the culture in a way that hasn't happened for 10, 15 years. Try Coaching was seminal, and it changed a lot of things. And I think what guys like you, Terry Cook, Intelligent Instructor with the Expo, Chris Benstead, and even the associations are doing a good job with this as well. They do a lot of free stuff, free webinars, and we have guests on. DIA do a lot of stuff as well. MSA conference in Scotland is on in a few weeks. I think there is a growing appetite for more. But there has to be more than just telling people what to do all the time. And that has to be a good thing. That has to be a good thing. I speak a lot about the culture that driving instructors are exposed to, and the two biggest channels that they have exposure to are the test centre and social media. Both of which have real issues, because the person who shouts loudest gets the biggest audience, as we know, says he, talking into a big microphone. But I think there's an appetite or a growing awareness that the guy down at the test centre who's been an instructor for 40 years maybe isn't the best person to talk to. No offence to anyone who's been an instructor for 40 years, but you know where I'm going with that. I hope that the culture of why do we need to take more training? I've got a brilliant pass rate. I've got a grade A in my standards check. Really interesting that every driving instructor you talk to has an 85% pass rate, but the national average is 45%. I always find that quite interesting. I'm
not going to disclose my pass rate, but it's not 85%.
Oh no. I speak to my PDIs about this all the time. My first 7 driving tests as an ADI, as a PDI and an ADI, all failed. Complete shambles. Yeah, don't worry. Let's not be too test focused. Do you know?
That's what I was hoping you'd say. It made me feel better.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a change. I can sense a change, and I feel my job is to help keep that going. I feel a sense of responsibility as a rep from one of the national associations, as a driving school owner, as somebody who's gone out and selling training courses now, to kind of lift people up, lift people's that sounds patronizing, to kind of encourage people to aim a bit higher, and the kind of driving instructor they want to be. And there are you guys are doing a great job with the content creators. You, Terry Cook, Phil Cowley, Chris Benstead, deserve massive credit for the time you put into the stuff that you do. So keep doing it. Please keep doing it.
I'm not going anywhere. As long as people want to come on, we're staying.
Yep.
You delved into a lot then. It was fascinating, really interesting. A question that I had towards the end, and as an instructor trainer, hopefully you can help. When I had my Part 3 training, I'd done an intensive course. And from memory, there wasn't much coaching. There was telling. And if that's what PDIs are exposed to through the training, do you think there's a step missed there? And maybe for the PDIs listening or the trainers potentially looking, coaching could be used at that stage as well? Or do you see people using coaching to develop PDIs through their 40 hours or however many hours they're having? Is there a place for that? Have I just missed it with the trainers? What's your view with that?
So my view is your training that you received. I'm going to assume from a national company. Is, and you don't need to answer that. I'm not in the habit of slagging off any particular people, but I think it's fairly typical that you've got to be careful here, haven't you? I think the vast majority of PDI training in this country is test focused. It's focused on the part 3. It's focused on what the examiners want to see. It probably hasn't changed much from the way that they've always done things. And somewhere in the training, and I know this because I've been shown training resources from a couple of the national schools. Somewhere you will get a small reference to coaching and client-centered learning. Almost like you have to say this because that's you ticking that box for client-centered learning, or you have to ask questions because that is coaching and this kind of thing. And you hear examiners say that as well. So it's not wrong, unfortunately. The way driving instructor training and the way that the problem with that setup is that feeds into the culture. The way you've been trained it affects your identity as a driving instructor when you qualify. And some people will be very dissatisfied with the training, and they'll be that person like you, or like the person I was talking before, who will say, okay, I want to find out more. There must be more to it than this, because that was rubbish. I must face it, a lot of the time it is. But maybe people scraped a pass or whatever. Or they passed easily because they did exactly what the examiners were looking for. The way the driving instructor courses should be run is the way that we run ours. And I'm sure there are loads of other products that do it this way, which is our driving instructor training course starts off by training you to be a coach. And somewhere along the line, we will teach you about the core competencies. And we'll talk about the marking sheet, and we'll talk about topics and all this kind of stuff. Because to me, I'm pretty sure Lee and Mick Kit would say exactly the same thing. It's teaching people about the GDE matrix, for example, from day one of becoming a driving instructor. That's where we should be. This is back to what I said earlier on. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We've got all this magnificent research from the brightest brains in the country and across Europe, and we're not using it. We're sticking it onto page 95 of a driving instructor training manual when it should be chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we teach, many trainers teach people to be coaches first and instructors second. And that's not because coaching is better. It's because coaching is more difficult than becoming an instructor. To become an instructor, you just have to be told what to do. It's the same as being a learner driver. Anyone can learn how to drive if they're able of following instructions and being told what to do. Although apparently 50% of the country can't pass their test on the first attempt. But that aside, we've got it the wrong way around. We've got it the wrong way around. And unfortunately, if you've not been exposed to coaching and client-centered learning during your training, the vast majority of instructors will just think, well, that's fine. I've got my badge now. Why should I bother? They won't be like you. They won't go and the vast majority are not like you. They'll be happy just to earn good money, which they are earning at the moment, far more than I ever earned as a driving instructor.
More than I am now.
I'm fully aware that not everyone in the country is earning it. It depends on location and how many hours in the week you can deliver, whether you're part-time or full-time, etc. It's relevant to where prices were 20 years ago. It's a lot more. It's a lot more. It's gone up far more than inflation has. So the incentive, I talked a little bit about this at the expo when I was talking. The incentive for people to seek out training and development has to come from within at the moment, because CPD is not mandatory. As I said, people are earning money. There's plenty of business around. Nobody's fighting for learners. And we also have the kind of victim mentality where everything that's wrong with road safety is not my fault. It's the DVSA's fault. They're passing them. It's not me who's passing them. They're passing them in the driving test. So there are many reasons that a driving instructor will not go and develop themselves. And a lot of it, not all of it, a lot of it comes from the training, the driving instructor training side of it. So that probably does need an overhaul. And unfortunately, for driving instructor trainers, I can see this happening. I can foresee some point in the future this being outsourced. And to become a driving instructor, you have to go to college, and you have to get a qualification, and you have to write essays and all that kind of stuff. I can see that happening. And if it does, we've only got ourselves to blame for not rising up and doing stuff without the DVSA.
But what you've just said there, I think that has kind of changed my view maybe on why people aren't doing CPD as well. It's that incentive. There isn't one at the minute. It's not, like you say, it's not mandated. People are earning good money. And for a lot of things, a lot of different courses, you're going to have to not earn and pay. I've seen a few comments about why are you charging for this course? So I ain't providing it for free. I've got a family to feed.
Yep.
So that mindset, you mentioned it very early on with the mindset. And if people are coming into it with a coaching mindset, I'd like to think they'd want to develop in themselves, because I think with coaching, there's always something next. There's always a way to improve. Whereas with instructing, you can learn the highway code, the DES. What else do you need if you're telling?
Yeah. So and that's one of the great things about coaching, is that it is it opens up possibilities. That's one of the definitions of coaching, is that it facilitates conversations that open up possibilities and solutions for the coachee. I think it's the ICF or something like that has that as a definition. And once you've experienced coaching or coaching training, proper coaching training, then it should have, or it can have, a powerful effect on your life, on your worldview, and as you start to kind of think about things in a different way. Which you're right, you don't get that if you're just being told what is right and what is wrong all the time. I think you're absolutely right. I did have something else to add there, but I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, it'll maybe come back.
Yeah, I think we're trying to find an incentive for CPD.
Yeah. So if I found my train of thought, So I think we have to be careful. I think I mentioned earlier on that maybe 10 years ago, we had this kind of coaching versus instruction kind of battle going on. And people have been accused of being, quite preachy about coaches and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's maybe fair enough. It doesn't have to be that way. And one of my favorite quotes, so the stuff that I'm doing with Bright Coaching and the qualification that we've developed with Bright Coaching, I'm under no illusions that there is a small minority of driving instructors will do my qualification. I don't expect 40,000 driving instructors to be emailing me next week. The website opens next week. I don't expect 40,000 driving instructors to be emailing me next week saying, we're all coming to Glasgow to do this qualification. That's not going to happen. So what we have to do in terms of changing the culture is just keep getting this message out that things can be done differently for whatever reason. One of the biggest things in behavioural change is behavioural change is on our course. Behavioural change works for different people in different ways. And if you're designing a behavioural change message, you need to design it in such a way that it resonates with your audience. Really quick example of this. There's a road safety campaign that Budweiser developed for one of the Super Bowl. They ran it during one of the Super Bowl ads years ago, and it was about drink driving. Budweiser backed it. And the central character in this advert was a dog. And the advert was, ironically, my cat is now screaming outside the door. It's because I mentioned a dog. And the whole premise of this advert was the dog was there, had its owner, all very glamorous, very middle class. And then the guy was, the owner was saying goodbye to the dog because he was going out with all his mates. And he had a crate of Budweiser. And he went out. And he never came home. And the idea was that, think about your friends that you're leaving behind if you choose to drink and drive. And the advert kind of closes, then it comes back on, and the guy decided to stay at a mate's, and he didn't drink and drive, and everything's lovely. Now that's a behavioural change campaign because it's trying to resonate with people who have dogs. It did not resonate with me when I'm watching that. I was watching that, and it did not resonate with me in the slightest because I dislike dogs. And I'm sorry, I know you have a dog. I dislike dogs, but that did not resonate with me. Now, I know it sounds like I've gone on a tangent here, but I'm bringing it back now. When we're talking about changing the culture of learner drivers and trying to get learner drivers to make better decisions for long-term health outcomes, i.e. not drive into trees with all their friends in the back on a Saturday night. That's what we're trying to do, in a nutshell. That's what we're trying to do. We can't do that without first changing the behaviour of driving instructors. So when we're on YouTube or when we're standing up at the expo talking, or we're on Facebook forums, and I don't contribute to Facebook forums very much. I'll kind of broadcast on my own feeds, but I don't get involved in discussions. But I know lots of people do, and that's fine. When you're trying to get the word out about something you believe in, whether it's coaching, client-centered learning, CPD, growth and development, the importance of not focusing on standards checks on part 3, we have to be aware of delivering that message in a way that resonates with people who are open to hearing it. And that's not easy because we don't know anything about people we don't know. Sometimes we don't know anything about people we do know. Everyone is individual. You don't know anything about your learner drivers. You don't know what they like to do. You don't know what their beliefs are. You don't know what their values are. You don't know who they look up to. You don't know what their peer group, you don't know what their family situation is like. And the same goes for driving instructors. We don't know what motivates driving instructors to become driving instructors. We don't know why people continue to be driving instructors. What we do know, and when I say we, I'm talking about associations, I'm talking about academics, I'm talking about, people who are doing positive things like you and Terry and Phil Cowley and Chris Benstead. What we do know is that people follow your channels. And we do know that they will subscribe to for paid content for Terry stuff, for example. We know that people will pay for training courses through the NGC, which are not focused on passing the test. And all we're looking to do is grow that percentage of people slightly every time. That's all we can do. But we can't be preachy about it. We can't be judgmental about it, which is, coaching 101. Let's not judge people. You're not going to force driving instructors to suddenly go and take days off and spend hundreds of pounds on CPD. All we can do is try and reach the people who are slightly open to this idea and make them aware that there are options and that we're here. That's the extent of what we can do at the moment. And the more volume that we can give to that message, the more coordinated we can make that message through some kind of partnership that we were talking earlier on between academics, associations, leaders in the industry, then the louder that voice will be. Because I think there are a lot of driving instructors in the country stuck in that test setting environment who are maybe not on social media. They're not in an association. And they're maybe stuck and just, they don't know where to find that something else. That was my wee soapbox moment there.
We got there, and you're right. How do you reach those people? It's just going to have to kind of spread almost organically, I think. And I'm noticing a lot of people that are following mine, or the people that I talk with that follow this, are fairly new to the industry or are just coming into it. And the ones that I've spoke to, you can see that they already want to do more than just pass a part 3, which is interesting. It's nice to have those people. So everyone that's listening, I appreciate it when we do have a chat, because that's going to have a change. And then in a few years' time, that's going to have a knock-on effect when those people are becoming trainers, and it's going to spread.
Yeah.
That way, it's just going to take time.
That just makes me so happy, though, Josh. And if to the people who are watching this on your YouTube channel or listening to the podcast, thank you to you guys for taking the time out to listen to this instead of listening to Radio 1 in your car or whatever, or watching Match of the Day or something like that. I don't know if people watch on a Saturday night, but you get my point. Because you might think, the people who are new to this industry, you might think that this is normal. And unfortunately, at the moment, this is not normal. Not normal at the moment is people don't change what they're doing. People do not actively seek out CPD. As someone who's been in the industry for 16 years, this is what you guys are doing is not normal. Keep doing it. It's a strange message, yeah. But no, well done to everyone.
So what advice would you give people coming into the industry? I know we've got CPD. Has there been any things that you've noticed with your trainees that are coming through that have been potentially common difficulties, if that's the right word, and where you would recommend people kind of focus their efforts to become driving instructors? If you've got any tips for people.
So you're talking about pre-qualification or post?
Pre. So people fairly new that are maybe on a PDI license or coming up to a part 3, whatever route they've chose. But if there's anything that you've noticed people generally struggle with, and how to get by it.
I mean, I've got to be careful of this as well. Be careful of what content you're actually consuming. There's so much content out there, and a lot of it is not great. I see this with our PDIs as well. And I know that some of our guys are going to watch this, so I'm not being judgmental. Coaching 101, I'm not being judgmental. But I have trained PDIs and sat in and watched them deliver driving lessons. And I struggle to see the stuff that I've taught them sometimes. And I see things that they've picked up from other places that hasn't come from me. And that can be annoying. It's a little bit like when you take a learner driver for a mock test the day before the test, and all of a sudden they're straight line one particular roundabout because their dad told them that's what everyone does. It's a little bit like that. Be careful of the content you consume. Make sure it's from a reliable source. Make sure it's up to date, within the last couple of years, because examiners have changed the way that they assess standards checks in Part 3. They'll deny this, but examiners have changed. Certainly in our part of the country. Examiners are adapting all the time to the way that they assess based on the PDIs that they're presented with. I think if you're with a national driving school, be very, very careful. Ask how long your trainer has been a trainer. Ask how long, this is a terrible thing to say, ask how long your trainer has been a driving instructor, because we're hearing some really terrible things about the national driving schools. Find a local trainer. They don't have to be audit. I'm not audit. I used to be audit registered, and I came off it because it was rubbish. It was the old style audit test when we had the new style standards check, and there was nothing about coaching or client-centered learning in it. So I let my audit certificate expire. We're trying to get back on it now. My audit test was supposed to be this week.
Okay.
Bizarrely, and it's been cancelled because all the examiners have been pulled away to deliver L tests. So I'll need to wait a bit longer. But the best trainers are not always audit registered. In your area, you could have someone who's not audit registered who's better than some of the people on audit, and we hear that from examiners.
I've not taken much training, but that's what I'm hearing around here.
Yeah.
I hope he's not watching, or her.
Yeah, and the DVSA, do they have to say it? Go and get training from an audit registered trainer or whatever. Yeah. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Obviously, if you live next door to Tom Stenson, that's going to be the right thing to do. Okay, then you go and see Tom, because he's a well-respected, well-known trainer. So just do your research. Just on the nationals, if you fail your first attempt at a Part 3 test, go and find someone else immediately. Go and get your 5 hours training with someone else, someone who you're recommended by someone somewhere. What other advice would I give? If you're a PDI watching this, you don't need to worry about additional CPD of the kinds we've been talking about earlier. Your primary focus has to be Part 3. You have to be test focused because you've invested so much money in it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just learn the marking sheet. Learn the 17 competencies. Who do we know? Who knows? We have a course on the marking sheet that goes through the 17 competencies. Lee Sperry, is it Lee Sperry or Lee Sparry?
Lee Sparry.
Yeah.
He's episode, one of the earlier episodes, and then one that went out 2 weeks ago.
So I didn't even know Lee had been on. So Lee knows the 17 competencies from stuff I've seen him talk about elsewhere. Lee and Mick know their stuff. Who else? I mean, I'm not going to go all over the country naming trainers because it's just going to be all my mates, and that's not fair. But understand the marking sheet, and have a look at the ADI 1. It's a bit bizarre because the ADI 1's a huge, very, very boring document, but in the ADI 1, you will find the guidance for examiners that tells them how to mark you. It's like a cheat sheet. It's a cheat sheet for how to pass your Part 3 test. Get people to sit in the back of your test and give you assessments. I do probably about 50% of my training work at the moment, certainly in the latter half of this year, is rescue training from other driving schools. And I see far too many people who have been for one attempt or two attempts at a Part 3 or a standards check, and they've never had a trainer sit in the back of their car. To me, that should be mandatory. You have to have mock tests. Same as if you're a learner, you should be having mock tests. So get someone to sit in the back of your car who understands the ADI, who understands the marking sheet. So in terms of passing a Part 3, that's the best advice I can give you.
It's advice I wish I had before I failed my first Part 3. The biggest thing for me when I went into my second one was exactly like you said, was having someone sit in the back of the car, and vice versa, me sitting in the back and watching, because you see so much more from the back.
Yeah.
And you'll start to understand how much the examiner can see that you're missing when you're in the heat of the moment with a pupil. So yeah, things like that you've said there would have saved me time, money, and a second Part 3 if I'd have done that.
Yeah, and it's so strange. It's just learning from experience. So you have somebody sitting in the back, and then they can say to you, so at that point, we should have been adapting the lesson. And then you recognize that red flag. And then the next time it happens, you say, oh, there's a red flag. I should be changing the lesson now. I know it's dead easy sitting here, isn't it? It's, yeah. But that's how we learning from experience is a huge part of
it. Some great advice, and hopefully it will help people that are watching and networking with other ADIs, and just watch some lessons as well. If you can't get out much, go watch something, and as long as what they're doing is good, you'll be all right.
Yeah, that's it.
If it's a bad lesson, we've got a problem.
Yeah. Also, if you're on a training license or something, have a marking sheet in the car, and after you've delivered the lesson, just mark yourself. Pretend you've been watching somebody else and you're marking them. Just self-reflect that way as well as a good way of doing it.
Another good one there for the 17 competencies. I had, when you were saying about people going through the competencies, two episodes ago, Neil Whiteman, we was chatting about the competencies and things that he's up to. So there's a lot of stuff out there for people to go and find, and the names that you've mentioned, everyone's so approachable as well. That has been an eye-opener for me, like with you guys that I'm talking to. I'd probably be a little bit hesitant to reaching out to some of the big names to ask questions and get some training with. But everyone that I've spoke to, I mean, I'm not going to say ring Stewart, I'll leave that to you, but I expect you probably offer some sort of online course where you can help people or direct them to the right place. And there's people all over the country that are doing very similar that you can reach out to. There's a lot of help for people.
Yeah, there is. Definitely is. Just find your regional driving school or your regional trainer, and they'll have something. Yeah. And Intelligent Instructor is actually not a bad place to start if you don't know. Intelligent Instructor are very well connected, and all the people that speak at these conferences, they know their stuff, and they're all very generous with their time. You saw it yourself at the conference. As soon as somebody had been up speaking, there would be 7, 8, 9, 10 people going up round about them, and just people were just getting free advice everywhere. Go to these expos. Make your way to these meetings of your local associations, which are free. Sometimes you have to contribute to the tea and coffee or something, but get to the local driving instructor association meetings as well. And if it's rubbish, this is the most important point. If you join a local association and it's rubbish, change it.
I did. I'll talk about a little bit the expo. I know you've brought that up and the numbers there. From my point of view, that was the first one that I've been to. But all day, you could have just sat in free workshops from trainers from up and down the country. You could just go from one room to another room with your notebook, taking all of these resources for free, and then all the stalls that was there. It was a really good day. I took a lot away from it. I wasn't 100% that day, so didn't take as much away from it as I'd like to. But it's the fact that that was free and everything that was there. I'm looking forward to next year. Don't know whether there's any dates released, but I'll be back there again.
Yeah,
And I'd highly recommend it to anyone that's listening when the date is released. Get it in your diary.
Absolutely.
Get to it.
100%. 100%. Yeah. They're really good. I've been going for about 3 or 4 years now. I think I missed 1 year because I had COVID. But yeah, it's quite inspiring. It's quite inspiring. And it's that whole it's a pushback against the argument of driving instructors who say CPD's not compulsory, so why should I do it? Or why should I have to pay for it? The DVSA should be training me because they think they're employed by the DVSA. You don't have to pay for training. You can get loads of free stuff online. Do you know? You can get loads of free stuff online. If you pay for stuff, make sure you're going to someone who's well recommended, well respected in the industry. That's not difficult to find out now through recommendations. You'll get a more personalized experience if you start paying for things. Like anything in life, you get what you pay for at the end of the day, though.
That's what I would have liked my training. More around me and my experience. I think if it was around that, I was a trainer for 8 years before becoming a driving instructor. And if I'd have been able to use that experience, I think my training might have been a little bit different. But it was, yeah, we won't delve into my training. But I think if you get in that personal touch,
I guess I mean we don't need to dwell on it, but I'm guessing roughly what happened was we managed to smack all that 8 years experience out of you, and you've forgotten it all now, yeah.
We had to fall back on it for the second part 3.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I think there's something there, and I do see now the more people I'm talking to, I made the mistake of going to number 1 on Google. It's a cheap course. Let's do that one.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, and hopefully this will help some of the listeners, is it probably would have been cheaper going to a more expensive trainer that can deliver a package that's suited to me rather than a generic, this is what we need to deliver over this many hours.
Yeah.
And at least explore that. Just because they've got a good website and a good sales team, they might be a good match for you, but explore others and then find out, make it an informed decision rather than they're a big school, they're going to be the best for me. Exactly. I don't think that's always the case.
Exactly. 100%. I couldn't agree more.
So we will come back to something because we won't bash the Nationals anymore. Someone might be watching that knows me. Praise sandwich. You told me to bring this up again.
Oh yeah. So I mean, this is just an example of the DVSA's understanding of coaching and client-centered learning and how feedback works. The idea of eliciting feedback is being a better way of getting someone to learn and take responsibility for their own learning. If they stop for a minute and think about what they've done, instead of just being asked, so how do you think that went? Yeah, it was all right. If you can encourage someone to think about what they've done in more detail, what they feel positive about, what they feel negative about, what they would like to work on next, to see if you're using scaling, for example, to increase their figure. And I remember in our training course, this has come back maybe 6 years, we were very much, pushing that eliciting feedback line, as the vast majority of people who've been on a try coaching course will be aware of. And then to sit in on a part 3 test and watch my PDI do that very well and have a real client-centered conversation with their pupil, and to watch the pupil from the back seat, to watch the pupil kind of go, yeah, okay, I think I know what I need to do. I think I need to, do X, Y, Z. I won't get into the details. I know, fortunately, the PDI passed the part 3, but the feedback from the examiner was, do you really need to go into all that? Have you ever heard of a praise sandwich? You just tell them what they did well, tell them what they need to do better, and then tell them something else good. It works every time. And I'd spent the best part of 18 months writing a driving instructor training course, saying that the praise sandwich was rubbish, because I don't particularly like the praise sandwich. That was a bit of a kick in the teeth, because it's not client centered. The praise and asking questions is not coaching. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I could go again, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stop myself. It's the example I use when I'm talking about the differences between the DVSA understanding of CCL as it applies to the part 3 and my understanding of CCL as it applies to the part 3. And you could say that I'm wrong and the examiner's right, because people have to pass part 3, and I would accept that argument, but it doesn't make me any less annoyed. Yeah.
So it's finding that balance, isn't it? Because for me, what I want to do is I want to develop as much as I can, learn as much as I can, and yes, be aware of the competencies, which is why I'm doing some of the training I am now, because on one side I've got the standards check, but for me personally, I want to learn as much as I can about people and how people learn and how I can help them develop. But I've always got to, and it's like we spoke about not being test focused. I'm not 100% test focused, but it's a large percentage as much as the development as well.
Yeah, and the earlier you are in your career, kind of counterintuitively, people fail the test, and you've not had that many people to test, and you start worrying about it, so you get more test focused because you're just desperate for passes. It's difficult. It's difficult. For me, I want to do audit, not because I think audit's the greatest thing in the world, but because it holds me to that marking sheet, and the senior examiner's interpretation of it. I think of audit as keeping me honest, and honest, test focused. Maybe it keeps me legitimate as a trainer. Maybe that's a better word. Without me attaching any great value to it as a tool, because for me the value is in the stuff that you were talking about. Is the person. It's the potential we have to elicit long-term behavioural change. We're working with Ollie Taylor at The Honest Truth, who's a great guy. If you're looking for guests on your show, Ollie Taylor would be fantastic. So Ollie and I are going to be working closely with Bright Coaching. The Honest Truth is going to be part of our qualification. And the stuff that The Honest Truth do is long-term behavioural change. Now, if you pulled out your phone or your tablet while you're parked, engine off, obviously, keys out, by the side of the road, and showed a pupil a 3-minute Honest Truth video, you're not going to get any points for that. But you should, because the stuff that they have is powerful. It's It's delivered in a way that is not patronizing. It's delivered in a way that encourages people to think for themselves. And there's no place for that in the testing regime at the moment, because we're tested on lower levels. To get back to Lee's soapbox, I should have got my own soapbox. I don't need to take Lee's as well. Yeah.
The honest truth is something that's come up a few times on the podcast. A few people have mentioned them. So what we'll do, if you're happy, we can put a link to them in the description as well. So anyone that's unsure, not come across them, we'll get a link in. We'll hijack your episode for the honest truth.
Well, listen, absolutely delighted. If any of your listeners are based in Scotland and they're interested in the honest truth, and you want to know more about it, then I'm happy to talk to them about it. Ollie's a busy man. He's retired now, but he's involved in lots of different stuff. And I'm kind of helping Ollie as part of this deal with Bright Coaching. I'm going to be helping spread the word for honest truth in Scotland, because Ollie's right down on the south coast. And for him to reach up to Scotland is a bit of a stretch. They don't have a lot of money. They're a non-profit to all extents and purposes. So if anyone in Scotland needs more information on that, then please reach out to me, and we'll have some links below, I'm sure.
Amazing.
I don't get anything from that. I don't get any benefit from that. There's, I just believe in the product and the honest truth, and it's important.
I have been on their website and read what they're about. It's good what they're doing and the reasons behind it. So yeah, we've got the honest truth. So we've spoke about it a little bit. Where can people find info on the course that you've got coming up in early next year?
Yeah, so brightcoaching.net is the website that we have. If you go to brightcoaching.net at the moment, you will just see a landing page with a sign-up form. That's just for people to join the mailing list. The website opens to a week tomorrow. Yep, 30th, a week tomorrow, the website opens. And we're opening for bookings at that point as well. If you want to know more detail about the course before that opens, then you can just get in touch with me through Facebook. You'll find me on Facebook, or you can email hello@brightcoaching.net if you have any if you think you might be interested. In a nutshell, we've developed an accredited qualification with SQA. SQA is the Scottish Qualifications Authority, our version of Ofqual. And what that means is the course has been assessed, the content's been assessed, the learning outcomes have been identified, the resources. We have had to become an accredited centre with SQA, which is a 6-month process to make sure that all our policies are in place and that we're legitimate and internally verified, externally verified. And there's been nothing in our industry like this since the BTEC Level 4. Now, when I started writing this, the BTEC Level 4 was still around. So this is not a replacement for the BTEC 4, or it wasn't intended to be a replacement. I didn't know tri-coaching was going to eat itself and disappear. So at the moment, we are the only accredited qualification in the country for driver instructors. Hopefully, more people will follow us. There are 4 modules focused on coaching, driver psychology, and behavioural change. The behavioural change one is linked to the honest truth, as I mentioned earlier. It's taking place in Glasgow next year. If we're successful, we will do more courses. But I'm really excited about it. I've spent a lot of time and money developing it. It's been hard work. Probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. I'm not using hyperbole. It's been really challenging, the level of admin and hurdles that we've had to go through to get it accredited. And yeah, we're there now. We have a page on Facebook as well at Bright Coaching. You can find us there.
We'll get all of those links in the description for anyone who's interested, so they can find you easy enough. Are you still offering training to PDIs, ADIs? Do you have people doing that, or where you at with that? You're still doing that as well?
Yeah, so we we're a driving school, obviously. Caledonian is the name of the driving school. We have 5 training managers, all based in Glasgow. So we're a good sized driving school, but we are very local. So we don't travel around the country delivering training. If anyone in the kind of rough geographical area wants to become an instructor, they would have to travel to Glasgow. We do rescue training for people from other driving schools or people who have failed standards checks. And all of our trainers have been trained by me to some extent. So the majority were trained to become instructors by me. Or if that's not the case, they were trained to become trainers by me. We're all going through prep for audit. So we will hopefully all be audit registered as soon as we're allowed to become audit registered. That's the plan. We have a product called the marking sheet, which people can buy. I think it's about 100 quid or something for 4.5 hours of content on the 17 competencies. So I'll give you a link to put to that as well that people can buy online. I don't go around selling that. I don't push that. It's primarily there as part of our PDIs. When they're on the pink badge, they have to do 20 hours of additional training, and we give them this course because it covers 4 hours of their 20. So that they know that marking sheet inside out by the time they go for their part 3. That's why it was written. But it just so happens that it'll work for anyone who's failed a standards check or who's prepping.
So lots of info there for people if they want to find out more about you and what you're up to. But Stewart, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share and get out there?
No, I think that's it, Josh. I guess join an association would be the final plug. Join an association, because the people who run these associations are volunteers. We get paid expenses. If I travel down to the expo to help organise that, because the NGC are one of the organisers for that, I get paid travelling expenses. But we give up our own time because we feel there's a place for associations. If there's an association running a meeting locally in your area, just turn up. Just turn up. The MSA had to cancel one in Scotland earlier in the year because they didn't sell enough tickets. And that's not my association, but I was furious. I was raging that we didn't have enough driving instructors in Scotland to go and fill a national conference. It was quite embarrassing. So please support the associations, turn up to the meetings. If you don't like the way they're run, join the committee and change it. Yeah, that's my final message.
Great. Loads covered. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time, Stewart. It's been great.
Thanks, Josh. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you very much. I will see